What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another week of Fantasy Basketball This Week, presented by District of Buckets. We got a lot of information to talk about today. It's a very special episode. We're talking general NBA discussion type stuff. So it's a general NBA discussion type beat. We're about to get into it with our boys, Justice and Carl. Carl's shaking his head at me. I know you can't see him, but we're about to get right into it. Let's roll the tape. Let's go. All right, once again, welcome back to Fantasy Basketball This Week, presented by District of Buckets. I'm Tyler Castle with my co-host Carl, and we got our special guest, our Lakers specialist, our NBA genius, Justice McGee. Justice McGee, how's it going, guy?
Hey, man, it's going great. Always a pleasure to be on the show, man. I'm really excited for discussion. Got a lot of things to talk about today, so let's get into it.
It's been a minute. We just covered some fantasy basketball stuff on Sunday, but today we're just going to be talking general basketball stuff. So we're going to start it off with Laker Nation. How are things going over there?
Man, all right. This is a safe space for Laker Nation fans out there across the globe. Because I'm not going to lie, man, seeing LeBron go down, seeing the Superman go down is never a fun thing, especially for the whole NBA, not just the Lakers. And the bounce back from LeBron's absence, obviously combined with AD's absence, has been tough, man. 1 in 4 in the last, 5 games has been spooky. The offense isn't generating. But today, we got ourselves a little gift. And that gift is 6'10/6'11. I don't really know. Andre Drummond, man. And I'm here for it, dude. I'm here for it. But it hurts my heart, Tyler. It hurts my heart that it had to be, against the Boston Celtics over there. But he almost changed, though,
Why'd you take him from me, man? Why'd you have to take that man from me?
Dude, you know what? It's crazy. I'm really excited that he ended up rolling with us. There's a lot of opportunity for him to be in Boston, even, in New York with a lot more money. But I do want to talk about Andre real quick, man. Andre's been getting a lot of slander online as well as with the positivity. It's been back and forth conversation on Twitter. But the reason why I'm so heavily invested in Andre Drummond being a key factor to the Lakers being able to repeat this year is because of the things that he does consistently, right? Andre Drummond is not a consistent offensive player. You're not a guy you're going to give him the post and watch him go to work, and that's what some of the things he had to do in Detroit in his short time in Cleveland. But on this Laker team, you're asking Andre Drummond to get rebounds, you're asking him to be in the correct defensive position, and you're asking him to, clog the paint. And those are 3 things that he can do on a consistent basis, Averaging 13.8 rebounds this year is huge. And then if you look at it per 100 possessions, he's averaging 16 rebounds a game. Like, that's great work. But the most important part of that is he's doing half of those on the offensive glass, which is huge. The Lakers are right now 17th in the NBA in offensive rebounds, which is something that they were top 10, even top 5 for a little bit last year, with being able to rebound the ball at such a high clip. Being the number 1 rebounding team in the NBA last year, down to round 10. And he's doing that, unbelievably well his whole career. So we can expect that coming in. And then you look at his defensive ratings this year, man. He's posting his 2nd highest defensive rating of his career this year as a guy that people talk about as a stat stuffer who isn't really doing anything on defense, who isn't really doing anything on offense. They say most of his rebounds come from missed shots that he's putting up. But he's never had to play for a contender before, man. He's never had to play for a team that's really competing for a finals championship run. Really, he's never played with players like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, where he can be the 3rd option on a basketball team. And those are all the things that I think benefit the Lakers going in. He's going to play really hard, man. And Frank Vogel, not to get overlooked. Frank Vogel is an amazing defensive coach. I was almost going to say the best defensive coach in the NBA, but he's going to get a lot out of Andre Drummond. So I think that there's set up for success with this guy.
All right. So the real question for fantasy owners is, what does Andre Drummond's performance look like when AD comes back in the next week or 2? LeBron comes back 4 weeks from now. Is Andre Drummond going to be a guy they're going to want in their lineup come that championship week of fantasy basketball?
I think that from a fantasy aspect, you are safe in the regular season. I think that Andre Drummond in the regular season is going to log at least 30 minutes a game, even with the additions of AD and LeBron coming back to the starting lineup. And I say that almost pretty confidently because I think that the Lakers are smart enough to start to slide. It gives a little bit more versatility with Trez, where they can have Andre Drummond in the game at the 5 or have Mark in the game at the 5 and roll with Trez at the 4, which would allocate some more center position minutes for Andre Drummond to stay in the game. Obviously, I think his scoring goes down, so I wouldn't be relying on that too much, but I think that his rebounds increase, and I think that his blocks and his steals also do increase being in that Lakers defensive scheme. So I say, you know what, man, if you got Andre Drummond on your team, I think it's a viable option to continue to roll with him.
Yeah, and everybody that has him has been holding out since he's been sitting out. So they're trying to get some money out of him, and I personally think that he's going to, like, in the coming weeks, it's going to be a sell high candidate. It's going to be like a guy that everybody's looking at, oh man, he's putting up these 20 and 20 games. Like he's got 3 20 and 20 games through 3 weeks or something like that. He's going to be a sell high candidate as soon as LeBron comes back, AD comes back. Mm-hmm. His minutes are going to be significant.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I can see him in the next 2 weeks. I think I was telling these guys for the show. I think that AD returns in about 10 days. But I think that in the next 4 games that we have with the absence of AD and LeBron in the lineup, he's putting up like 30 to 35 minutes a game, maybe even 40. You can see him play in a couple games. I think he'll be on the court a ton just to get integrated into the system. Knowing these games don't matter, I think Frank is going to use them as like practice for Andre to get him ready for the playoffs. So you can see him playing a ton of minutes. I would definitely sell high on Andre Drummond in the next 2 weeks.
Cool.
Let me just hop in real quick and just pose the other half of the question.
I was about to bring you in on this.
Yeah, just wanted to pose the other half of the question because we've seen the Lakers use the buyout market and get Andre Drummond, and so now obviously we're going to look to the Eastern Conference, what the Nets have done, even going further back, talk what they did with bringing in Blake Griffin. Mm-hmm. And all the different moves that they've made, and now adding Lamarcus Aldridge. Just like, I'm still not 100% sold on the Nets 100% winning the title like people think they are. Because I've been on Twitter and people keep acting like they have Lob City Blake Griffin and Blazer Lamarcus Aldridge out here. You could probably find lists of players on rosters right now that are gonna outproduce these guys. Even some on Eastern Conference contenders. So, I don't think the road is as sweet as they think it is, despite all the talent they have.
Yeah, let's not sugarcoat it. We're on the fuck the Brooklyn Nets train over here. From Laker Nation all the way out to Washington and Boston, it's fuck the Nets. And I want to be on record saying that Steve's got me 4K. Fuck the Brooklyn Nets.
4K.
But yeah. So moving on from the shady ass Brooklyn Nets and the Lamarcus Aldridge signing, he's gonna play 10 minutes a game alongside Blake Griffin's sitting back to backs 8 minutes a game. He's gonna dunk one time and yell at the Detroit Pistons bench. I'm over it, bro. I'm over the boat. It's over here. We're talking Evan Fournier for 2 second-round picks. That's what we love to see. We got a better shooting percentage than Victor Oladipo for 2 second-round picks. Get out of here, man. It's Boston all the way, taking on the Lakers. Going to knock them down in 4.
I might need to open the window, man. That take was hot. It was hot. But yeah, I like Evan Fournier, dude. I think that, Evan Fournier is a good scorer. He shoots the ball at a good clip, man, from all over the place, especially the corner 3. He loves the corner 3, dude. So
yeah. That's a piece that the Celtics needed. It's not the piece they needed, but it's a piece that they needed, and that's a guy that can spread the ball out. So Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown could get to work in the post, get to the bucket. Also, Evan Fournier gets to the free throw line by himself more than the rest of the Celtics combined.
Wow.
So there's an interesting statistic for you.
That's crazy.
Well-needed piece, yeah, for sure. And then over on Wizards' side, they didn't do much over on the trade deadline, but they've got a guy that's coming out hot right now, Rui Hachimura. How's it?
Oh wait, you're gonna say didn't do much on the trade deadline before that? Let me step aside. This is the Wizards segment. You can
okay.
Well, okay. So nothing. Hey, for Wizards fans, every trade matters. Everything matters right now. We gave up my guy Mo Wagner. Gave up Troy Brown Jr., which I'm actually kind of disappointed about because he had so much potential. He ran point guard in the bubble last year, and then all of a sudden they just forgot about him. Classic case of just Scott Brooks really only letting guys, were small handle the ball for some reason. I don't know what's going on here. But the trade I love was for Daniel Gafford from Chicago. Like a couple times I saw him play against the Wizards, just rim running, getting rebounds, dunking. This is like the best athlete the Wizards had at center. Like potentially to take like big rotation minutes in a long time. Because I've been dealing with, watching it's like Rolo right now, Alex Lynn, beginning of the season, Thomas Bryant. But this is a guy who can definitely pair up with Russ and Beal, clean up the boards a lot better, play some defense, block some shots. So I think going forward, it's a good look. Part of me wants us to lose though, and just get this lottery pick. But I feel like for some reason, just because we're the Washington Wizards, there's enough of a run to get us to at least maybe have the play-in game be a thought and ruin our draft pick for this year. And that's how the Washington Wizards play. And then to go on where Tyler was headed before I cut him off so rudely, is how Rui Hachimura has found the dog, man. I've been waiting for it for a long time. They took him out of Gonzaga, and I saw him do all this stuff. Had a relatively good mid-range game. Got to the bucket, was dunking on people, stuff like that. And you see him go this year. He was really passive at the beginning, especially in the lineup with Brad and Russ. He didn't really know when to attack, when to make moves with the ball. And now he's finally settled into his role as this tertiary scorer, and he is really taken off. Yeah, he baptized somebody on the Pistons the other day.
Yeah.
Shout out revenge for Yuta Watanabe. Rest in peace. after what Anthony Edwards did to him a couple months ago. But it's even though it's all misery, it's still at least there's some things heading in the right direction in Washington D.C.
Yeah, so to bring it all back to fantasy, we got to talk Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier is going to be a guy that's going to see his production cut a little bit because he's most likely going to come off the bench. Marcus Smart's probably going to be the starting shooting guard unless they got some tricks up their sleeves. I honestly would like to see Smart come off the bench and in the bench squad, but
really,
that's another story. Yeah, I would. And then as for Wizards players, what does that mean for the center rotation? Who should be, if we're looking at any centers on the Washington Wizards, who should it be and why is it Daniel Gafford?
Okay, so Daniel Gafford, he's shown, at least in limited minutes, that he fills a lot of the gaps the Wizards have had all year, which are very blatant defensive and rebounding gaps. Also, when it comes to guys to play with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, another guy who has the athleticism, for some of those lobs, off of them. He's so far shown that he's making the most out of all his minutes. And the only weird thing to keep an eye out for, though, is Scott Brooks has just been infuriating with whatever he decides his rotation is going to be. For example, when we had Mo Wagner, there's a point where
he gone. Come back, Carl.
Taken out of the starting line. So
you froze.
So that's why I say Gafford, just because what he's shown in limited minutes has been productive. And that's all you can really guarantee out of a Wizards center is looking at their productivity in limited minutes. So I'm going with him.
Great insight. We love everything you said.
Yeah.
You froze for a while.
Dang. When did I freeze?
Shit, I don't know. Right in the middle.
Right about to
you were talking about Scott Brooks. Watch out, Scott Brooks has been.
Oh yeah, I said Scott Brooks' center rotations have been a little crazy this year. Just like how he had Mo Wagner, who was starting during the Wizards run, and then all of a sudden just got pulled out and you didn't really see him play much the rest of the time there. So you have to look at guys that are making the most out of their like limited minutes that you see for the Washington Wizards. And so Daniel Gafford has already shown that he's that type of guy to make the most out of like the small minutes. So you at least have a higher floor than the other two guys.
Yeah, and to put actual numbers to these names, Alex Len played 15 minutes yesterday, 14 fantasy points. Daniel Gafford, 14 minutes, 35 fantasy points. And then we got Robin Lopez, who had the majority of the minutes. 20 minutes, 29 fantasy points. So if we're going in fantasy point order, then it's going to be Gafford, Lopez, Len, and same efficiency-wise, it's going to be Gafford, Lopez, Len as guys you should pick up. Let's talk about some of the other guys that got moved. Who are some other guys that we should talk about that carry some weight in the fantasy basketball world?
I would love to talk about Lamarcus Aldridge. Love it. Cool. I think that they promised LA starting position in Brooklyn at the 5 position, right? Lamarcus Aldridge is the second worst defender at the center position in the NBA per 36 minutes this year. That is awful. To a team that already does not play defense, to add a 35-year-old 6'9", 6'10" guy as your center is blowing my mind a little bit. And I think that if you have Lamarcus Aldridge on your team, you've had decent games in San Antonio, man. But man, I would run for the hills with this guy. I think that I would immediately be completely out. I think that he'll play 25, 30 minutes a game, and I think he'll have games where he'll be able to turn the clock. He's still a good scorer in the post. Like, his mid-range game is still like, I would say top 10 in the NBA. But there's a lot of mouths to feed. And dog, like, I just don't see him being an impact like they're making it out for him to be on this Nets team. I think a lot of people think he's going to be like a big contributor to this Nets team, and I just like completely disagree from an NBA and a fantasy aspect.
Yeah, Marcus Aldridge is kind of Bodie this year.
Bodie,
to put it lightly. He's played just about as many games as Andre Drummond, and Andre Drummond was forced to sit out. So if that gives you any perspective into how good Lamarcus Aldridge is going to be for the rest of the season, the answer is probably not good. And if you're trying to decide between, if you're in like a shallow league and you got Andre Drummond and Lamarcus Aldridge on your waiver wire and you're like, man, who should I pick up? The answer is not Lamarcus Aldridge. It's most likely Andre Drummond, and there's actually probably better guys than Andre Drummond out there if those two guys are available in your league. So bringing it back to fantasy, man, like Lamarcus Aldridge, he's not going to be getting a lot of touches on that Brooklyn Nets team. There's two guys on that team that can dominate the ball, and then there's possibly the greatest scorer of all time also on that team once they ever come back. So yeah, Lamarcus Aldridge is not a guy that I'm looking to pick up off the waiver wire if he's available.
You know who a guy I think that I would look into though is Rajon Rondo. How do you guys feel about that?
Ooh.
Where did he end up? He ended up in
He might be the starting point guard for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah, actually, that's a good one. I did not think about Rajon Rondo.
I'm telling you, man. I think Rondo is going to give a lot to fantasy owners. And he's a guy I know is going to be available in most leagues, man. He hasn't played at all in Atlanta for the most part. But he's going from a role where he was more so coaching a young all-star to a role where he's going to be asked to be the starting point guard for a contending team. I think that Rondo is built for those type of moments. And I think that you can get a lot out of him, riding him on the bench or bringing him in for a substitution. I think that Rondo offers a lot, man.
Yeah, so throughout this season, he's averaged 13 points on 15 minutes, 13 fantasy points on 15 minutes. So not super effective, but bringing him onto this Clipper team where he can thrive in the assist category, can thrive by throwing dimes to Paul George, throwing dimes to Kawhi. That could be really good for him, and not having to share any of the other offensive load, like literally not having to put a shot up if he doesn't want to. So That's an interesting guy to look out for. Some people have been asking for us to talk about people available in deeper leagues, and Rondo could be one of those guys to look out for. And then another guy that was on the move. I'll let Carl, why don't you talk about him, and then we'll get into the next guy.
So we're going for who is one? Sorry.
We'll talk about Rondo still.
I'm still going Rondo. Yeah, so honestly, I'm kind of with Justin saying on Rondo. Just we've seen what he does in big moments, and this Clippers team has desperately needed a solid point guard. Like, I think we talked about it before. Where we're just like, you can't have a guy like Patrick Beverly, Reggie Jackson be your point guard if you're going to try to make any noise. You need that type of, like high IQ pass first guy. And they got exactly that in Rondo, and I think he's a good fit for that team right now. So I would say, I'm like you said, deeper leagues. Yeah, I'd buy him in deeper leagues because I just don't know too many point guards that have this type of opportunity to rack up assists like he can.
Yeah, probably like 14, 16 team leagues.
Yeah.
The guy I wanted to talk about next was Gary Trent Jr. and the move to the Raptors. My guy.
That's a good one.
All the time on the podcast, and in his first debut, he saw 31 minutes with the Raptors.
That I do love.
I'm a big Gary Trent guy. Huge Gary Trent guy.
Yeah, he didn't shoot particularly well, and he had no rebounds, no assists in those 31 minutes. But I think it's a matter of getting comfortable because Gary Trent Jr. is a shooter, bro. And if I know anything about the Raptors, they need a shooter right now. They need a guy that can space the floor. And they're obviously they're willing to try anything that works. So they have a pretty terrible record right now. And they're looking to get something going. And Gary Trent Jr. seeing 31 minutes in your debut, that's a good sign.
Dude, I think Gary Trent Jr. is a baller. I think he's a baller, man. I mean, he historically just obliterates Lakers from threes. That's most of the time when I'm watching him, he looks like an all-star. But on a day-to-day basis, dude, I really like that trade for them. And I really liked it from a fantasy aspect as well. I think that Gary Trent's kind of been itching for a bigger role in Portland, and you can't really do that on a team that's, gonna go to the playoffs. But you look at Toronto is in a pretty sticky spot. Maybe make the playoff playing game, maybe. But like you were saying, he's going to get those 31 minutes a game, and he's not going to continue to shoot the ball like he did in his debut. Man, he's gonna get open. He's gonna knock threes down on a consistent basis, and I'm really excited to see what he can do off the bounce. I think that it frees him up to make more mistakes, but also flourish more. I'm intrigued with the assists and rebounds just because it's a new team and it's not something that he does very well anyway. But yeah, scoring wise, man, I think he's a bucket. So I'm in for that too.
Category leagues, if you need a 3-point man, Gary Trent Jr. He's available. He's available pretty widely in most leagues. And then on the flip side, Norman Powell traded to the Trailblazers. They're actually playing each other right now, which is kind of cool. I wish I was watching that. But yeah, in his debut, he had 36 minutes, 22 points, 2 steals, a block, 36 fantasy points. So, and he was averaging 30 minutes a game before on the Raptors, and now first debut, 36 minutes off the bat against Orlando. Could have been a test just because Orlando's kind of like a shell of the team they were before the trade deadline. Same way with Nurkic. Nurkic owners rejoice. Welcome back, Big Nurk. But yeah, Norman Powell, Gary Trent Jr., tremendous opportunity on both these teams. It's kind of weird that they weren't seeing that many minutes before, and then they get traded and both of them get a boost in minutes. So it's weird how that opportunity works for them. Also, those Oregon jerseys are nice.
Fire.
So nice.
Fire.
What else we got to talk about, bro? Yeah, go ahead, Justice.
I was just thinking about another guy just came out of my head. Vucevic.
Yeah.
Where we going with Vuce? He's obviously not going to have the same amount of looks. But he's on a better team. So how do we feel?
I just think talent-wise, like he's there. The Bulls still have a bunch of their issues, like I'd say, like with the rest of their rotation to kind of figure out. But having him solidifies their offense, especially with all this, like, especially with all the patience they've had to have with Lauri Markkanen this year has been hurt, and they had a bunch of injuries. Getting rid of was it Wendell Carter Jr. Has also been kind of an interesting one because he was also banged up at the beginning of the year, and it's just like it's stability that they haven't really had as a front court scorer that I don't really think changes. Like, it obviously makes them better. I'm not like afraid of the Bulls because they have Vooch now because they still have so many other issues. But I think it's encouraging. What he had, like, was it 21 on like 16 shots or something like that?
21.
So seeing him taking like 16 or something shots last game was at least encouraging to see that his, what his role is there. He's there to also be that like primary front court scorer.
Yeah, I mean, he scored the first points of the game on the team's first possession. So they wasted no time getting him acclimated. Had 21, 9, and 3, 40 fantasy points, just dominated. And that actually ties back into a pretty popular fantasy guy right now, which is Thaddeus Young, who briefly had some starting spots. And he played really well. He's like 9th in his position rank. And he was a guy that came off the waiver wires this year. So if you're a Thaddeus Young owner, you might be looking to move Thaddeus Young because he will not be seeing the minutes or the production that he was seeing before Vucevic was there.
Yeah, I think that Vucevic is going to command a lot from that Bulls team. I don't know if I'm rolling with anybody from a fantasy aspect on the Bulls besides Zach LaVine, just because, like, there's a lot of mouth speed. Zach LaVine's going to shoot the ball like 15, 20 times a game. You're knowing that every game, and now you got another high-volume guy in Vucevic, who they're going to go to down the stretch too. I think the Bulls played a lot of team basketball down the stretch, especially when LaVine was going through like a little mini slump before he started just popping off. They were playing a ton of team basketball. And I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I think that's going to be like a 1-2 punch that they're going to try to ride out with and just roll with that. So I think, yeah, Vucevic for sure, man. Zach LaVine always, but I'm not really invested into a lot of other Chicago Bulls players from that standpoint in the fantasy world.
I expect. As for injuries, KD, when's he coming back?
Ooh,
I think this is more serious, man. I'm bought in to the conspiracy that this injury is a little bit more than they were willing to tell us in the beginning.
All right, headline. Fantasy Basketball This Week podcast says, fuck the Nets. Ties into KD conspiracy.
Yeah, why not?
That is the video title. Submit it, print it. It's over.
Dude, I'm with it though, man. KD's obviously like unbelievable. Best player in the NBA, skill wise. But I'm just like, dude, like, do they need him to come back? No. Is the hamstring serious after the Achilles injury? Absolutely. So it's like, I don't think they're in any rush, man. I think that they just want him to be there for the playoffs, and I feel that 100%. So if they can still win games, who cares how long KD sits? They're second in the East, man. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a way different situation than the Lakers. Like, the Lakers need LeBron James to come back. You know what I mean? Like, they, cannot do this without him. Like, I think that the Nets, regular season-wise, are just going to be just fine without KD. So who knows, man? Who knows when that guy comes back?
All right, I was just curious. You guys had any thoughts? You got anything else we want to touch on, or we want to wrap it up with the fuck the Nets consensus?
Oh, actually, I just got to give a shout out to my guy Tyrese Halliburton again. Just hey, he's been balling out ever since Melo went down. He can smell that he's right there for maybe taking that Rookie of the Year award. He has really turned it up in the past couple of weeks.
Dude, him as a starter is the best move. Let's talk about, shout out Luke Walton too, man. Luke Walton saved his job, dog. But regardless, him as a starter, he's been unbelievable, man. He's been unbelievable. I was watching the other day. Who they playing? When he went down to the wire, he hit the N1 3.
That step back.
Yeah. And I was watching that, and I was like, dog, I watched the whole game. I was like, he deserves to start every game for this team. Like, deserves it. And the way De'Aaron Fox is playing just alleviates pressure from him. Yeah, Halliburton. You know, I said some things last time I was on the show about THT and Halliburton. I just would like to apologize as I've seen THT step into a bigger role, and I know that he's not ready. But Halliburton is he's ready for that.
I also had to bring up last time you were on the show, you were singing the praises. KCP,
man.
You were singing his praises. What happened, man?
Oh, man. Hit me right where it hurts, dude. I love KCP, but he is terrible. I mean, he's terrible. The last 2 months, I think it's like literally, I think that when I was talking about him last episode, he was already trending down, and I was like subconsciously trying to make him hear what I was saying, give him a confidence boost. But for the last 2 months, him and Wesley Matthews have been the worst two players on the floor on like 8 out of every 10 games. And yeah, man, it is crazy to think about, but he's still shooting over 40% from three. If that shows you anything about how hot he was in the beginning of the season, that he is still shooting 41% from the three-point line this year. And I mean, he's been hesitant to shoot the ball. There's no confidence. There's no real life. He's stepped it up a little bit lately, but, you know, KCP, THT, my guys, I don't really know. But Kyle Kuzma, stay riding Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma's a guy's guy, man. 7.5 rebounds this year. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? 7.5? He's averaging it? Come on, man. Offensive rebounds, 3 a game? Come on, you know? Kyle Kuzma. Stay with him. Fantasy outlook, Kyle Kuzma is your MVP.
That is a good spot to end it right now. Justice saying, we're going to put in big, bold letters. Kyle Kuzma, fantasy basketball MVP, Justice. That's a good place to end it right there. All right, folks. This has been another great, magnificent episode of Fantasy Basketball this week, presented by District of Buckets. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment down below. Tell us how stupid Justice is for saying that Kuzma Fantasy Basketball MVP, or tell us that you also hate the Brooklyn Nets. And if you say anything else, you're blocked. Well, you're blocked from our YouTube channel. So it's been a great episode. It's been really fun. We enjoy doing this type of stuff. So if anybody else has anything to say, go ahead, and then I'll cap it off once more.
Just basically, you know, still shouting out all the fans. You know, glad we have some pretty nice solid growth over the last couple months. Again, this is all, you know, a shout out to everyone who finishes the episode, it's all the way through. Like, it's all for you at the end of the day.
Yep, big time. Also, I think we hit 250 subscribers this last week, so. Quarter of the way to the Thou Club. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Fuck the Nets. Peace.